Emily Ross, LPC, and we are here all month long talking about Depression Awareness Month. So, before we start digging up emotions, trapped emotions, and trying to release them, it's a good idea to make sure that you have the resources or the capabilities of managing those feelings. I think a lot of the times the reason why we stuff our emotions are because we don't feel capable of managing them. They seem overwhelming or like they'll consume us. So before we get started, I really want to help make sure that you have the tools in place to deal with the emotions that you uncover. So I've been doing therapy for 20 years now, and a lot of the times people will come in with horrific stories of the trials that they're going through, the painful events that are occurring in their lives, and the distress they're feeling. And when they're done sharing their stories, I'll ask, well, how are you coping with that? And people kind of look at me confused, like, what is coping? We're not really taught what coping is until it's too late. We don't seem to be taught that like up front or in school. So, and sometimes people do have coping skills and just don't know that that's what they're doing. They have hobbies they enjoy, they go to the gym, they do this or that, and they just haven't connected the two, that this helps manage that. But a lot of the times people don't have any coping skills, or they'll say, I'm drinking or using drugs, or I sleep a lot, or things like that. And those are coping skills too, but they end up layering on other problems for us in the end. They're coping skills in that they manage the feelings in the moment or make them go away, but they don't actually help us in the long run. They actually add more problems for us to do. So before we get started, we really want to have a good amount of coping skills ready that we know work. So the way that I've done this for the entire time I've been a therapist is the same way. I just grab a piece of paper, write the alphabet down longwise, and come up with activity or something that you might do that starts with each letter of the alphabet. And I do that way for a lot of different reasons. I've found that there's 3 different types of coping skills. And again, this is Emmy's made up philosophies on therapy and wellness, because you can't Google these things, but they are true. They've played out so many times, I believe they're true. There's 3 types of coping skills. One's kinesthetic, which is moving your body, going to the gym, lifting weights, running, kickboxing, those kinds of things. And those are good for emotions that demand a physical expression, like anger or anxiety. They work really well for those. Then there's cerebral coping skills, which are thinking. They're reading books or learning something new, or writing, things like that. Those are more like intellectual. Those are good for emotions like depression sometimes, and like the softer, sad emotions. And the third one is creative, making something. It doesn't matter if you sculpt or if you paint or if you draw, or if you craft, whatever you do, creating something, like playing guitar. Those are all creative. So there's 3 types of coping skills, and it's important to have a good amount of all 3, because if I'm angry, I'm not going to stop, drop, and read a book. I don't know if you've ever tried that. It doesn't work well. And if I'm depressed, I'm probably not going to be able to go running or do something real physical. So it's good to have a lot of coping skills in your repertoire. And so when people use the alphabet as like a guide for coming up with coping skills, they tend to naturally just come up with something for each one of those 3 categories. So that's why I like to do it that way. I'm going to have rules for this part of what we're doing, and I don't usually have rules, and I like people to make their own rules, but there really are some guidelines that it's important for you to follow for this to be successful for you. The first one is, don't put anything on your list that you won't do. If you get to S and you put skydiving, but you're scared to death of heights and don't like to fly, don't put skydiving, because it's not going to serve you when you need it. You don't want a bunch of junk on that list. You want that list to be there for you when you're needing it, right? So when I'm angry and something's really overwhelming me, I want to look at that list and I want everything on there to be something that I'm willing to try. So first rule is, don't put anything on the list you're not going to do. Second rule is, it's really around, you decide what's a coping skill, or really your brain decides for you. If I go to the gym every day and it's just become a habit, a lifestyle for me, and it doesn't necessarily help me mitigate a mood or distract me from hard things that are happening, then it's not hitting like a coping skill anymore for me. And so I really need to X that off my list and put something else in its place. You know, our brains are so smart, our thinking brains are so smart, and when it's not a new task or it's something that's really familiar, our brain won't think too much while it's doing it. And that's really what we're doing with coping skills, is we're trying to distract our thinking brain and get back into our body, into our feeling brain. So if the thinking brain isn't significantly distracted, it's not going to work. So you decide if it's a coping skill or not, and I need you to be really honest with yourself about, is this hitting like a coping skill or isn't it? Because it's not going to work unless it hits like a coping skill, and we're going to need these things to work when you need them. So and the last one is this list. The last rule is this list is fluid. So when you've decided it doesn't work anymore, you cross it out, you add a new one. And actually, no, that was number 2. Number 3 is that we're going to start practicing coping ahead. So coping ahead is a concept of don't wait until you need to cope with something to start coping with it. Emotions kind of go into our bodies like a whiskey barrel, like we're filling up with emotions, filling up. And if we're not doing anything to siphon off all of that emotion and intensity, what happens is something small tips off that whiskey barrel and it breaks at the seams, and our emotions go everywhere at everybody, and it's usually prompted by something that has nothing to do with what's causing all that fullness of emotions. So what we do instead is, that little spigot on the side of the whiskey barrel, we that's coping. We just open that up a little bit, let some of the emotion out every day. Every day we're kind of bringing that whiskey barrel down to like a little bit lower, so it never gets full and it never explodes. So people tend to think of coping skills as something you do after you're overwhelmed, and it can be, but it doesn't need to be. Like if Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I take 30 minutes out of my day to just cope ahead, I call it. So whether I'm creating something or going to a dance class or running, every day I dedicate some time to that. On Thursday, if my boss blows up at me and yells at me and criticizes me and like fires me, I'm going to be able to better manage that in the moment because my whiskey barrel's empty. I'm not full of other emotions. Whereas if Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I'm just getting increasingly overwhelmed and I'm not siphoning any of that off, and it's just all building, that might tip me off and I might just explode and it might be bad. It will definitely be worse if I haven't been doing anything to try to actively cope. And the other reason it's important is because self-love really cures a plethora of ailments, right? And when I dedicate 30 minutes out of a 24-hour day to myself every single day, I'm showing myself that I matter, that I'm worthy of time and attention, and that I get to attend to my own needs. And when you're expressing that kind of self-love to yourself every day, it really does help you heal. So before we get started, I want to encourage you to do this exercise. Just write the alphabet down. If you have trouble, Google it, ask your friends, post it on social media. Hey, I need a hobby that starts with the letter Z, help me out. Get your kids involved, ask your friends. It's really that creating that list is a coping skill in and of itself. So I want you to do that. If you need a pretty picture to go with it, we're going to have workbook style pamphlet over on Facebook. If you don't follow me on Facebook, it's the same, Emily Ross LPC. Follow me and you can print off the workbook page I post for that. And at the end of the month, we'll have one on Amazon. You can purchase all of the workbook style stuff that we do this month. But before we get started, I really encourage you to do that. You're going to be glad when you have that in place before you start delving into all of these trapped emotions. So make your list and start today with coping for 30 minutes. You can do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night. You can take your lunch break to cope, but try to start working up to 30 full minutes of coping ahead, and let us know how you do in the comments. Tell us all about it. I want to know which ones you tried and didn't work, which coping skills you had that you didn't know were you coping. And if you have any trouble, let our community come together and start conversations about it. We'll help you, we'll lift you up, we'll encourage each other and share our triumphs and struggles with this. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe.